Hello everyone, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. Recently UPSC has conducted its mains 2026 and different subjects of GS as well as essay we are having the detailed discussions by various faculty at Legacy IAS, and this is the discussion for GS4 paper ethics. All detailed discussion of all 19 questions that we are going to discuss, theory questions as well as case studies part here. Before starting the discussion of each questions one by one, I will give you brief idea about what was the nature of questions that this year UPSC asked, and along with that we will try to understand what approach was needed in this new pattern of questions that UPSC has been asking now in the ethics paper. So first of all, in the earlier short video also I have told you that UPSC has introduced the case study aspect in, we can say that, theory part, in theory section. So what they are doing, they are basically describing that case study aspect in 3-4 statements, and there is some kind of conflicting situations or we can say competing values involved in that case, and as an administrator, as a doctor, in that particular situation what you will take actions. Okay, so somehow it is related to ethical challenges, challenging situations, and we can say that the moral or ethical dilemma is involved and you have to take the balancing opinion, we can say that. So here we can say that balanced opinion or balanced actions is required here. Okay, so this one aspect is very important here. Around 6 to 7 questions were based on this in theory part. Second important aspect is related to no specific, we can say that, quote based question this year asked, quote based questions. There were 3 quote based questions used to be asked separately, asking about the meaning of that quote and the relevance in present context. Now this year there was one small, we can say that, quote related to, let's say, arms, and we can say that their fair intention use, we can say that, of those arms, or we can say that specific related quote was not asked talking about any present context or something like that. Now if we talk about the philosophers and their specific philosophy, there was no question, no specific question on philosophers or philosophy. Okay, so most of the questions were applied in nature, we can say that, and also no direct relevance to your syllabus topics. Okay, or syllabus words were not used in asking question directly, we can say that. Syllabus topics, so they are mostly, we can say that, applied. We have to understand ourselves that which syllabus topic is related to this particular topic, right? So these things you have to understand. If we talk about, let's say, theoretical questions, one more aspect we have found is that the medical ethics related 2 questions were asked and 1 case study. Medical ethics, 2 theory questions and 1 case study. I will tell you that one case study is one case study and 1 question was specifically related to, we can say that, paternalistic behavior, paternalism in, we can say, medical advice, medical actions. This kind of, let's say, common kind of, let's say, theory content, and that first case study, same content you will write there. So medical ethics related questions, they have been, let's say, more focused in this particular. 2 questions were related to, we can say, ethics in international relations, national interest versus human rights, and we can say that strategic interest, and 1 case study, we can say that, right, 1 case study related to arms export. So ethics in international relations was also focused. Similarly, we can say that 2 theory questions and 1 case study, we can say that. So in this manner we should be, understanding, analyzing what things are focused. Medical ethics is focused, ethics in international relations is focused. Now most of the, let's say, the questions, they are asking about the administrative action. Okay, administrative action is requiring here the balancing action, and there are competing, we can say that, values competing, we can say that, the administrative or civil services values are involved here, interests are involved. In that situation, certain things we have to keep in mind while taking actions. I would say that 4 things we have to keep in mind. First, legality of action. Okay. Second, we can say that proportionality of action. Third, we can talk about is, we can say that necessity of action, and fourth, we can say that accountability for the actions. almost all theory questions, wherever administrative action is asked, all these 4 things we have to keep in mind while writing your answers, and you will get the correct, we can say that content, you will generate the correct content. Now apart from this, if you see the case study part, ठीक है, ये तो theory का part है, case studies part में आप देखोगे तो you will see that all 6 case studies were on predictable lines, ठीक है. So if you see the PYQ themes, in past also medical ethics related case study was there, corruption was medical ethics, or we can say that corruption related case study is there, corruption, or arms export related 5 principles. 3-4 years back they had asked arms export related questions. A similar case study was asked this year also. Now in recent times Manipur conflict was in news, right, and there was concern related to neutrality of administrative officers there. Similar kind of case study was designed here this year, okay. So Manipur conflict related case study. Then we can say that there are concern related to AI driven policing. अभी देखा होगा आपने दिल्ली में जो स्टूडेंट प्रोटेस्ट चल रहा था, उसमें भी कोई एक मशीन दिखाया था, एक वीडियो में सोशल मीडिया आपने देखा होगा कि AI फेशियल रिकग्निशन टेक्नोलॉजी और AI यूज करके वो प्रोटेस्टर्स को आइडेंटिफाई कर रहे हैं, प्रोफाइलिंग कर रहे हैं, AI ड्रिवन पोलिसिंग. Okay, so that kind of, let's say, thing was in news. Protests बढ़ रहे हैं, or we can say that policing, law enforcement, how technology is being used in law enforcement aspect. And one more case study related to, we can say that use of again technology, and we can say that for benefits, we can say that under PDS, public distribution. It was also in news many a times. Why? Because many a times we can say that thumb biometric authentication does not happen, especially for old age people or the workers. उनका जो हाथ का जो biometric डेटा होता है, या फिर हम बोल सकते हैं कि वो मिट जाता है, तो दे आर नॉट एबल टू वेरीफाई दैट, एंड दैट्स व्हाई दे आर नॉट रिसीविंग बेनिफिट्स अंडर पीडीएस. ये बहुत बार न्यूज में होता है, राइट. सो ऑल दीज आर करंट एंड कंटेम्पररी इश्यूज, and they are focusing more on this technology. You can see that technology, use of technology, and that's why, and here also medical ethics, somehow we can say biotechnology or technology related aspect is involved. So in this manner you should be, preparing even the current developments along with the PYQ based themes. Now let's go in detail, and briefly I am going to give you idea about how to deal with these questions one by one, the central theme and what should be the approach or the balanced stand that we have to take. We will not be giving, let's say, the detailed focus, but yes, I will give you that much of idea that you will be able to write the answers. Go through all these 19 questions. I want you to, refer to this particular video whenever you talk about PYQ for 2026. So this is going to be your base material for your preparation for next year, we can say that, for ethics preparation. Now first question, owing to paucity of time, university professor generates PhD evaluation using report using artificial intelligence, submit it with some modification, discuss from the perspective of accountability and integrity. These two keywords we have to focus in our answer. There is use of AI, we can say that, university professor. So what you should understand here in introduction, the university professor, they are basically experts. Okay, university professors, they are the experts, they have expert knowledge, and they are responsible for, we can say that, that's why given the task of evaluation of the PhD thesis and all these things, and that's why we can say that he is given that responsibility. Now when such kind of AI is used, what happens is, first of all you should talk about is compromise of accountability. It will result into compromise of accountability. So 2-3 points you should mention here. How it will result into compromise of accountability? First of all, responsibility. Okay, so whatever the report that is generated, still he will be responsible for that, not AI. ठीक है, हम AI पे responsibility नहीं डाल सकते यहाँ पर, हमें still the professor is responsible for it. So responsibility cannot be delegated to AI. So we can say that somehow it will be a compromise of accountability here when the person is, we can say, depending wholly on AI in preparing that report. Second we can talk about is AI can make mistakes, right? AI can make some kind of data errors, or some, let's say, if the command is not properly given, the superficial evaluation can be done by the AI, superficial evaluation. So it goes against, we can say, scientific integrity. It goes against scientific integrity, we can say that, of research. error in data and all these things. So, and the third point you can mention here is, we can say that whatever the we can say that the thesis that is being, we can say that thesis that is unpublished yet, okay, it is unpublished yet, and when we are, let's say, using that in AI, we are uploading that in AI system, right? So it is, we can say that the concerns related to IPR, intellectual property right, and we can say that concerns related to confidentiality, secrecy of information, privacy of information, we can say that. So confidentiality, breach of confidentiality we will call it. Okay, so this is related to, we can say, accountability. Now when we are talking about integrity, so you should talk about integrity. How integrity is lost? First define integrity. Integrity, we will say that it is uncorrupt state of mind. Uncorrupt state of mind. In terms of this particular person, university professor, integrity will be like assigned duty, we can say that whatever the assigned duty is there, and whether that is translating into actual actions of that person. If they are actually translating into actual actions, assigned duties, then we will say that integrity is there. Now here, whatever the person is doing here, that professional integrity is lost. Professional integrity is lost when such kind of AI is used due to paucity of time, whatever the reason, but such kind of superficial AI based, we can say that evaluation cannot be done. Professional integrity is lost. Second we can talk about is simply it is unfair to the researcher also. It is unfair to researcher who has done, we can say that 3 years of research for that PhD thesis, and basically such kind of super evaluation, he does not deserve that. Right, so that's why we should understand. So whenever such kind of, let's say, evaluation requires expert evaluation, that requires professional integrity to be followed. So what should be the ideal conduct? Ideal conduct you should understand of professor here is that first there should be detailed assessment, evaluation, and in that assessment you can take help of AI. Okay, take help of AI. In that assessment, it should be helping, and you can seek extension, okay, extra time, okay, even if there is less time, you should seek extension, and if extension is not available, you deny the evaluation altogether, otherwise it is against scientific integrity. So ultimately we can say that in conclusion, what you can mention is the professor in this situation, or we can say that use of technology may assist in assessment, okay, scientific assessment, but it cannot replace professional responsibility. Okay, so we should understand that here use of AI and all these things, you can see in theory part also they are focusing on, technology only. So somehow these are the emerging challenges. ठीक है, अब ये देखते होगे एक्चुअली रियलिटी में यही हो रहा होगा कि पीएचडी थीसिस जो है वो लिखा जा रहा है एआई का यूज करके, और इवैल्यूएशन करते वक्त भी एआई का यूज किया जा रहा है, एंड एआई इज नॉट अप टू पार येट, इट इज मेकिंग एरर्स, इट इज हैविंग एल्गोरिथमिक बायस एंड ऑल दिस थिंग्स, एंड दैट्स व्हाई देयर आर concerns related to scientific integrity of research, we can say that activities. So this is the way we have to deal with first question. Second, you can see a business house is working on a project. There is a project that could displace forest community, displacement of forest community from their habitat. As an administrative officer, what are the ethical challenges you are going to face? You have to focus on ethical challenges. So here in introduction, project is there. Project will result into economic growth of in that particular region, employment generation versus displacement of forest people. Okay, forest people, their livelihood is lost. This is, we can say, that core dilemma. In introduction, most of the time you have to talk about this conflict that people are mostly facing here. Okay, what kind of conflict they are facing, or conflicting, we can say, claims and conflicting values. In body part, what you have to focus is ethical challenges. What kind of ethical challenges are involved here? Okay, so first you should talk about in ethical challenges is related to same dilemma, we can say that economic growth versus we can say that dignity of tribal people. Dignity, human rights of tribal people, their rights over the forest, ancestral rights, Forest Rights Act and the recognition of rights under it. So economic growth on one side, and this is we can say that the ethical challenge that administrator face. Second, we can talk about from the philosophical perspective, utilitarian versus we can say that justice for all. Utilitarian will say that greatest good to the greatest number of people, but from that action we can say that minority rights, their people, we can say their rights are affected, so it will not ensure justice to all. So justice for all is we can say that going to be compromised. Third important aspect whenever we talk about ethical challenge here is we can say short term compensation should be focused versus long term rehabilitation. This should be focused. Then in terms of ethical challenges, we should be also talking from the perspective of environmental ethics. Okay. Although not mentioned, but it is involved, right? Because tribal people, they are involved in conservation of that particular forest. Now we are clearing the forest and removing those people. So ultimately it is going to create environmental harm, destruction of environmental habitat that was being preserved, protected by these forest people, although they were dependent on that particular forest. So they were involved in conservation also. Then also there is lack of, we can say that, distributive justice. Lack of distributive justice. Why? Because whatever the benefits that we are going to receive, economic growth, are they let's say received equally, or we can say that through justice, fairness, all these let's say benefits, are they reaching to forest people? So that kind of we can say distributive justice should be ensured, social justice should be ensured. So that is at stake here. It is going to be ethical challenge we can say, and ultimately when the displacement is going to happen, the forest people may we can say that protest, right? If there is inadequate compensation, or if we can say that the livelihood restoration is not done, so forest people may protest there. They have the right to protest in that situation. The administrative challenges may emerge, we can say that, as a part of ethical challenge. So in this manner we should talk about this. Now what should be the ideal course? We can say that what administrative officer should be following ideal conduct in this situation, balancing both. What should be the ideal conduct? First of all, we can say that there should be proper EIA if it is required. EIA, environment impact assessment. It will also involve social impact assessment. That will, we can say that, consultation, right? Consultation with local community, forest dwellers. Then we can say that recognition of rights. And if they are supposed to be relocated, then adequate compensation, then livelihood restoration, alternate livelihood opportunities should be given, skill development, alternate livelihood restoration should be provided, we can say, for that community, and that will ensure, we can say that, ultimately ecological safeguards should be also, we can say that, ensured when the project is being implemented, and along with that we can say that the dignity of forest community. Okay, so that should be also ensured. This is the way the ideal conduct should be there, and here some kind of philosophical basis you should be always giving. What kind of philosophical basis will be involved here? Of course we can talk about is, we can say, John Rawls. Most of the time now justice is involved, so John Rawls will be relevant here. His concept of justice as fairness. Now here when such kind of actions are taken, we will say that fairness is ensured, therefore justice will be ensured. Then Kant will talk about dignity principle. Dignity principle will say that here in this particular case, tribals should be treated ends in themselves, not as means to achieve certain ends. That's why we can say that this is the way we should talk about that. Now in conclusion, ethical responsibility is to ensure just, participatory and sustainable development. So we can say that the conflict is there, economic growth and environment protection and tribal livelihood forest people, we can say their livelihood, but we have to balance in this manner to ensure sustainable development. Now third question, a business house is, we can say, sorry, pardon me, ये तो हो गया हमारा. अभी थर्ड क्वेश्चन देखते हैं. An endangered tribe has developed severe skeletal deformity. Okay, university research has identified mineral supplement as a possible remedy. Though clinical trials are yet to be conducted, should district magistrate use this research on the tribe? Discuss from the perspective of medical ethics and administrative ethics. I told you medical ethics related. One more question is right. तो skeletal deformity है, tribal people है, right, and research is there, and district magistrate, there is clear provision of medical ethics and administrative ethics in the, we can say that, body part of your answer. So we should be talking from the perspective of that thing. Here again we can say that competing interest is that urgency to protect the endangered tribe versus scientific integrity, we can say scientific validation and patient safety. That should be your introduction. Now if you talk about medical ethics and principles involved here, कौन से principles involved है medical ethics के? First of all we can talk about is beneficence. ठीक है, beneficence, welfare, or we can say the protecting the tribal people, their welfare. Then non-malfeasance, no harm, we can say that. All these are medical ethics principles, right? Non-malfeasance. Third important principle is scientific integrity. Okay, scientific, we can say integrity, we can mention that principle also here. The research is not yet verified, we can say that. Clinical trials are yet to be done. So that is, we can say that, medical ethics related aspect. Then we can talk about is related to informed choice of the patients. Informed choice of the patients. Autonomy, we can say that. And justice. Okay, and justice. This is the way we can talk about as medical ethics principle. Then we can talk about is administrative ethics principle. Administrative ethics principle. See, these keywords are ethics related keywords. You should be using them in your answer. Administrative ethics related principle, here we should talk about as a civil service value of empathy and compassion towards weaker sections, right? Compassion towards weaker sections, that is here tribal people. Second we can talk about is objective decision making. Objective decision making, that is, we can say that, evidence based. So here evidence is not there, it is simply research yet. So clinical trials are yet to be conducted, so we don't have evidence here. Then rational decision making based on facts, rationality, right, that you can mention here. One more point we can add here is just promoting scientific temper in decision making by the administration. Okay, scientific temper. So all these we can say objectivity, impartiality, and all these things. So these are the administrative ethics principle. So now we can talk about is simply that what should be the ideal course of action. Okay, course of action by DM. So what he can do? He can basically first, we can say that whatever the university research is there, it should be reviewed. Review of research by, we can say, third party, independent, we can say that, independent review. Then we can talk about, if required, clinical assessment. Clinical assessment, we can say that, should be done for that research. For, we can say, any kind of practical results that are required. Then we can talk about is community consultation and consent. Okay, consultation is very important, and we can say that consent is very important. Informed choice they will take. Then we can say that clinical trials, monitoring, continuous monitoring for any adverse effect. Okay. Then we can say that review outcome of clinical trials and apply, okay, or simply we can say that wider use on tribals only when, we can say that, clinically proven, we can say that effective and non-harmful, then only we can say that it should be used for wider use. Okay, so when it is clinically proven safe and efficient, effective, then only it should be allowed. This is the way the ideal conduct should be there, right? Now along with that, ये तो time लगेगा ना इसको, right? It will take lot of time. So along with this, simultaneously what administration should do, simultaneously there should be diagnosis of the patients. Then we can say that treatment should be given, whatever the medical treatment that is available for that at present to symptom wise, symptomatic treatment जिसको बोलते हैं हम. Then we can say the nutritional aspect or nutritional support can be given by the administration, and we can say that proper rehabilitation can be done simultaneously. Along with that, there should be, we can say that inquiry into the causes of deformity. Okay, whether it is, we can say that any kind of nutritional deficiency, why there is nutritional deficiency in we can say that diet aspect is there, or we can talk about is related to any environmental factor is involved, or let's say pollution kind of thing, ऐसा भी हो सकता है, ठीक है, that we don't know, that should be investigated, so that whatever the research that has been done, it can be corroborated, and along with that the focus of the administration is not only on that particular research, but also the wider open mindedness is involved. So in conclusion, what we can mention is compassion with caution. So when we talk about compassion with caution, protecting the tribal without compromising medical ethics as well as scientific integrity and human dignity. All these terms are very much relevant to your answer, and whenever you answer in ethics terminology should be there in your answer, otherwise it is going to be creating problems. Okay, so here medical ethics related terms we have already written, administrative ethics and all. Now next question, it is now see again the conflicting values like national security. How you can balance national security with the concerns of human rights? Okay, concerns of human rights. Now different aspects you will see in the news, and national security involves, we can say that national security, in introduction itself you can talk about national security involves sovereignty. Okay, national security I will mention here like this, sovereignty, then we can say that protection of life, then we can say that security of state, then we can talk about is national security is also related to economic security, we can say that, or territorial integrity, simply territorial integrity. This is national security. Now related to human rights, okay, related to human rights will involve, we can say that dignity, principles of dignity, liberty, freedom, equality, justice, right, justice or fairness. So all these are human rights, we can say that, and privacy also, privacy, part of dignity, privacy. Okay, so all these are parts. Now how we can balance them, right, how we can balance them, this is the way we have to talk about that. Now in introduction itself we have written that, now which kind of principles we can follow, how it is asking, no, so we have to follow certain principles, following principles can be used. First, I told you the first at the start itself I told you 4 principles: necessity, proportionality, legality, accountability, and then along with that बाकी के सब चीज आप लिख सकते हो, ठीक है. एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव एक्शंस बैलेंस करना है हमें यहाँ पे, राइट. जो आधार का जजमेंट है, पुट्टा स्वामी जजमेंट वाला, ठीक है, पुट्टा स्वामी जजमेंट सुप्रीम कोर्ट, राइट, Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court judgment also talks about this necessity. So we have to see that the actions only if, let's say, genuine threat is involved to national security. So only necessary, unnecessary करना नहीं है actions. Then second we can talk about is proportionality. Proportionality, ठीक है. Necessity में आप डाल सकते हैं ना preventive detention just before the 15th August and 26th of January. So the police is basically detaining certain criminals, frequent criminals. We can say that those people involved in, we can say that crimes doing frequently. Proportionality, proportionate actions should be there. According to the threat involved, okay, proportionate actions. Like if suppose let's say the police action is to be taken on the protesters, like for example Delhi police and the 20th July incident student protest, ठीक है, तो लाठीचार्ज कितना proportionate था, it was questionable, and that's why they are supposed to be held accountable for their actions. So proportionate action should be there. Then third, because here also national security concern was given by the police, but concerns related to human rights, right to protest is part of freedom of speech and expression. Then we can talk about is, we can say, legality. Okay, so whatever the actions that are being taken, like for example it is related to surveillance, okay, surveillance is there by the law enforcement agencies, preventive detentions, okay, all these actions should be by legal, they should flow from legal authority, ठीक है, इसमें कोई भी किसी भी तरीके का इलीगल थिंग्स नहीं होना चाहिए, लीगलिटी शुड बी इन्वॉल्व. देन अकाउंटेबिलिटी, तो लॉ एनफोर्समेंट एजेंसीज, देयर ऑफिशियल्स शुड बी हेल्ड अकाउंटेबल. लॉ एनफोर्समेंट एजेंसीज, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल वी कैन टॉक अबाउट इज देयर आर चांसेस ऑफ फेक एनकाउंटर्स, कस्टोडियल डेथ्स, Tamil Nadu example of father-son custodial deaths. That example you can give, accountability, right? So then we can talk about is now the peripheral things you can mention, so many things like due process. Yes, it is important. Due process, procedural justice will be ensured. Procedural justice should be ensured. So here we can say that whatever the legal aid, okay, legal aid, fair trial, and we can say that protection against arbitrary arrest and conviction, article 20. इस तरीके से हमें ये करना है कि ड्यू प्रोसेस शुड बी फॉलोड, राइट, नेचुरल जस्टिस शुड बी ऑल्सो एंश्योर्ड. So these 5 important ones. Then you can talk about the other, let's say, points like privacy safeguards, because law enforcement is important and many times privacy may be violated. जैसे phone tapping for example, national security है, human rights, privacy concerns are there. So there should be accountability for that. Then transparency and oversight on the functioning of law enforcement agencies, they should be held accountable. Then professionalism. So here in the end you should mention solution kind of thing in terms of principles. So there is need of professional police, professional law enforcement agencies. For example, they should be trained in human rights, protection of human rights, how they should be respected, and then we can say maintaining the restraint, empathy, and we can say minimum use of force. So this is the way professionalism should be ensured by the law enforcement agencies. Now here the ethical aspect, what we can talk about is again justice is involved. So John Rawls is, we can say that again it can be referred justice as fairness. Privacy concerns are involved, so we can talk about law enforcement agencies. So we can talk about Kantian ethics, again dignity principle. And if it is justified, we can say that greatest good to the greatest number of people, utilitarian principle. Okay, greatest good to the greatest number of people. This principle we applied. For example, you can talk about is AFSPA, to deal with insurgency in Northeast India, Armed Forces Special Powers Act. This is the way you should talk. In conclusion, what you can mention, protection of human rights should strengthen, we can say that legitimacy, public trust, and automatically it strengthens the security of the country. We can say effective national security it will result in. So protection of human rights should be prioritized. ऐसे हम ethics में focus करेंगे. In GS3 if it is asked, of course the national security should be focused. इसी तरीके से हमें जिस पेपर में क्वेश्चन पूछा हुआ है उसको हमें फोकस करना है, राइट. सो एनवायरमेंट जो है या फिर जो भी टॉपिक पूछा हुआ है तो हमें फोकस उस वो सब्जेक्ट में अगर जो पूछा जाता है उसको फोकस करना है. Now question 3a, what it is talking, let's talk about that. Dr. Ambedkar had cautioned that employing civil obedience. So somehow I feel that this question was added after this protest, student protest. ठीक है, तो या फिर कई जगह पे सब पिछले कई दिनों में प्रोटेस्ट हो रहे हैं, राइट, एंड द प्रोटेस्ट इज समहाउ रिलेटेड टू सिविल डिसोबीडियंस, नॉट फॉलोइंग रूल्स, रेगुलेशंस, लॉज, वायलेशन ऑफ वी कैन से दैट द लीगल लॉज दैट आर देयर इन द कंट्री. Now what Dr. Ambedkar had cautioned employing disobedience within the constitutional democracy equates to endorsing anarchy. How should modern democracies navigate the ethical dilemmas posed by civil disobedience movement that aim to promote social justice against policies that may raise genuine concerns? Yes. So in introduction, Dr. Ambedkar, what he is trying to say, there was speech in Constituent Assembly, and in that speech he had said that when the people resort usually or we can say that frequently to the extra constitutional safeguards or measures, methods, when the constitutional methods are available to achieve the socio-economic objectives, like we have DPSPs, we have fundamental rights, and there are different, we can say that, provisions in the constitutions. When such provisions are available, when the institutions are created, constitutional and the statutory bodies, still when the people are following extra constitutional, we can say that, methods to demand socio-economic justice, then it is going to create anarchy in future. This was talked in the Constituent Assembly 1949 itself, Dr. Ambedkar. Now why it is said like that? This we can talk about is recent issues. ठीक है, recent issues. ठीक है, first you can talk about is, let's say, unjust policies, unjust laws, policies are there. For example, APSPA, resulting in, we can say that, human rights violations. We can say that minority people rights, rights of minorities, rights of minorities are affected. So that you can mention recent issues. Then recent issues are also related to injustice that is being done. So injustice in terms of what? Injustice related to, we can say that, the kind of illegal and unethical means by police or law enforcement agencies. For example, custodial torture or custodial deaths that are happening. Basically unethical means are adopted, we can say that it is creating problem. Then public order versus freedom of speech and expression, public order versus freedom of speech and expression, like frequent internet shutdown, right? Freedom of speech and expression, internet shutdown, for example, internet shutdowns frequently. So India is one international report is there, internet shutdowns, very large number of internet shutdowns are there despite being a democratic country in world, we can say that. So that's why that you can give the reference to that particular report also. So these are some we can talk about is issues, and here the core aspect is that whether to follow the constitutional orders, constitutional principles and institutions, versus there should be some kind of conscientious we can say dissent that is being done. Okay, the appropriate word is, we know, conscience, right? Conscientious dissent for unjust policies and that are seeking reforms, So there is some kind of feeling of moral duty for this purpose, and that's why you can see that many people were not directly participating in student protest, were supporting on social media or different platforms. They felt that it is their moral duty because they felt that there is injustice. Despite of, we can say, we have law, After NEET paper leak in 2024, government came up with the law, but still we can say that paper leaked in 2026. That means there are policies, but there are we can say inefficiencies in the policies, laws, rules and regulations, and somehow there is lack of accountability, and that's why to seek that kind of justice, that kind of we can say accountability on behalf of government, seeking reforms, the voice is raised. It is called we can say conscientious dissent, and they are we can say part of now CDM we can say in modern day democracies. Yes, we can say civil disobedience we can say movements. Okay, now ethical evaluation. Ethical evaluation, you should be giving references to some kind of philosophical theories. First you can talk about is simply again John Rawls. Justice as fairness. Okay, justice as fairness, that we can give example. So whenever there is you can say unfair actions on behalf of government, so that we can talk about. Then John Rawls has also accepted CDM as public, non-violent and for just cause and reform orientation. Then we will say that they are ethical. Such kind of CDMs or civil disobedience movements are ethical. Then even you can give reference to Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi's Satyagraha. Satyagraha. So Satyagraha included truth, non-violence, negotiation, reconciliation, and along with that we can say that readiness to own responsibility of actions. Whatever you are doing, you are taking responsibility of your own actions. So that kind of we can say principles were followed by Mahatma Gandhi as a part of Satyagraha. We can accepting willingness to accept the consequences, we can say that take responsibility. So reconciliation, negotiation, persuasion, we can say that kind of things are involved. So ultimately when we say that modern day CDMs, we can call them ethical. CDM ethical when we can say that the purpose is just, non-violent methods. Then we can talk about is normal constitutional methods have been exhausted, right? पहले हमने उसको try किया है. Methods, institutions, process are pursued thoroughly. Okay, but the substantial outcome has not been received, and that's why we are having CDM, and objective is to reform, not to destruct. Objective is to reform and not destruct, we can say that constitutionally created institutions. So then only we will say that the CDM is ethical. Then only we will say that CDM is ethical. Now here the responsibility of two we can say that stakeholder. One is responsibility of government, state. So what is the responsibility of government in this situation? Responsibility is we can say that first creating a environment for dialogue. Okay, dialogue with the protesters, those who are we can say involved in CDM. Dialogue should be there, consultation should be there. Okay, second important aspect is we can talk about is facilitate. If they are protesting, facilitate it. Peaceful protest. Okay, rather peaceful protest should be facilitated, protected. Then we can say that look into the grievances. Those grievances which are we can say that reviewing genuine grievances. Review genuine grievances. Then along with that you should be also talking or we can say that using, the government should use we can say that constitutional institutions. Like you can see that the government had in student protest used constitutional institutions. Even it was insisting opposition to come in the parliamentary house and debate on that issue. The law has been let's say amended, and more stringent provisions have been there for, we can say that, any kind of malpractices in the NEET paper or any competitive examination, we can say that. So that's why use constitutional institutions that have legitimacy, we can say that. Then we can talk about is negotiate with the protesters. And if we can say that violent, they are becoming violent, then there should be stringent proportionate actions also. Proportionate actions, okay, on violent protests. So this is the way. Now the protesters, they have also responsibility to respect non-violence, to respect the rights of other people, and along with that we can say that respecting the public property and democratic institutions and laws and rules and processes. So in conclusion, we can say that here the constitutionalism without complacency plus dissent without violence, this should be the focus in that actions, we can say that, dealing with such kind of situation. Then we can talk about is, yes, in what ways can Indian administrative officer apply Gandhiji's notion of trusteeship? Notion of trusteeship to ensure fairness in the governance. First you define it. What is trusteeship in introduction? Okay, so trusteeship is the concept, we can say, wherein power, wealth and we can say that resources are not absolute, we can say, possessions in a person, rather they are held in trust for welfare of a society. I will repeat it. Yes, the power, wealth and resources are not absolute possessions, right, and are held in trust for welfare of society. That means public office is office of trust, office of public trust, and not a privilege, not a privilege. This is the way we should understand. Now how it can be applied? Following ways. First, we can say that use of power. Okay, power should be used in responsible manner for public interest, for fulfilling public interest, not personal interest. First. Second, we can talk about is public fund as a trustee. Power as a trustee, we can say that trustee as public funds. So of course the administrative officers are having the public funds at their disposal and they are the trustees. Okay, so no wasteful expenditure, no, then prevent leakages, corruption, ensure prudence, propriety, fiscal prudence, propriety. Okay, third, we can say that as a, let's say, natural trustee of natural resources, administrative officers, natural resources like water, forest and all, we can say natural land, natural resources. So natural resources, their use should be, we can say that proper, we can say that prioritize their allocation. Weaker sections of societies, they should be allocated, we can say the appropriate management of natural resources, ensure development with, we can say that, environment protection. So natural resources, there should be conservation of natural resources. It is responsibility because principle of future, we can, or future generation is also dependent on it. So these three are, we can say, you should give priority. Then you can talk about is equity and social justice. Okay, equity and social justice. So here we can talk about is marginalized sections, poor, marginal, vulnerable. So they should be prioritized in giving benefits, public service delivery, right? They should be prioritized. Then we can talk about is yes, impartiality and objectivity in your actions, and objectivity should be ensured. objectivity should be ensured. Then along with that we can talk about is participatory governance should be ensured. Okay, participatory governance. Wherein Lok Sabha and local self bodies, they are also involved, so that we can say the concept of trusteeship is ensured. Okay, Mahatma Gandhi is also talking about, let's say, role of Gram Sabha, village panchayat, so participatory governance, bring that aspect. Then accountability, the administrative officers should be always accountable for their actions, answerable for their actions to the people, we can say that, answerable to citizens for their decisions and outcomes. Now here you can give any examples related to, let's say, district magistrate is involved in, we can say that there is a drought in a district, okay, and water is a scarce resource, scarce natural resource. In that situation there can be lobby, pressure by the industries, strong industries for, we can say that, their personal use, monopolizing the water use. So in that situation you have to show the moral courage and we can say rationalize the water use and prioritize that water use for drinking waters, especially for, we can say that, vulnerable sections of the societies, especially vulnerable communities. Then only we will say that the trusteeship concept is implemented by the administrative officers. So in conclusion we can say that trusteeship as a concept provides the foundation of, we can say, fair, accountable and citizen centric governance. Use these terms, fair, accountable and citizen centric, we can say that, governance. Also this concept provides that civil servants are, we can say, acting as a custodians of public interest. They are acting as, we can say that, the custodians of public interest, we can say that, yes. Okay, so this is the way we should deal with, we can say that, questions. Now, yes, those online students, yes, who are following, yes, watch this session till the end because it is going to be very helpful, and if you like these videos you can subscribe to Legacy IAS channel. Right, next question is Shakespeare is, we can say, in Henry V says, there is code based question, but this is very, we can say that, indirect question. The arms are fair when the intent of bearing them is just. See the term, intent of bearing them is just. What are the ethical implications in governance? So it is talking about governance, not in international relations. Literal meaning अगर आप लेते हो तो वो international relations में जाता है, arms से related. And this is the tricky word, the relevance it is asked in the governance. International governance, it is different part, but the focus of students here should be on the administrative aspect, the governance aspect. That means what is the meaning here? The exercise of power. Arms is having analogical context here, that is related to exercising power. Exercise of power is, we can say that, ethical, is ethical when intent of bearing is just, when used for, we can say that, just objectives, intentions, to achieve just objectives or intentions, we can say, when directed towards just purpose. But in governance, we can say that, in governance only just intention is not sufficient, right? Is not sufficient. There are other factors also, and that's why we have to think from this perspective. Okay, what ethical implications it is having? It is not only the sufficient aspect. We should talk about that first. There should be legitimate. Again, we can talk about the administrative actions. The 4 principles we said: legitimate use of authority. Okay, so whatever the power you are using, it should be legitimate, not despotic, not that power that is gained through illegal means, unethical means. So we can say that should be legitimate. Like in democracy, we have the power is used through, we can say that, legitimate means, because the power is given to those who are, we can say that, elected by the people of the country. Legitimate use of authority. Then there is concern related to, we can say, means and ends relation debate. Right, means and ends relation debate, especially we can say that, for example, police using, we can say that, unethical means to extract information from the criminals. torture is done, third degree जिसको हम बोलते हैं, right, torture is done to extract information, that is important for national security. Ends are good, but means we can say that they are unethical. So that's why we can talk about is arms fair when they are just, it is injustice, we can say that, or the means are unjust, they are unjust. Then proportionality, again we can talk about that same proportionality, whether the actions are proportionate to the crime. So that aspect is, you can say that, for example, police using lathi charge on peaceful protesters, it will not be called as proportionate actions, right. So that's why we can say that unjust. Then you can talk about is rule of law. That means we can say that no arbitrary use of power, authority. So that aspect becomes important here. Then you can talk about is accountability, one of the four that we talked at the start. Accountability is very important. Misuse of power, so that's why they should be held accountable. Corruption aspect is involved, personal interest is involved, so that we can talk about that. Then ultimately we can say that moral courage is required. Those who are wielding the power, those who are having the authority, they require moral courage for what? For protecting interest of vulnerable section. Protecting interests of vulnerable sections. So they require principles of moral courage, justice. So four virtues of Aristotle we can talk about is virtue ethics. Four virtues by Aristotle. All they are applied here: courage, justice, temperance and wisdom. Four virtues you can mention. This is the way. Then due process. Earlier also we talked about all these administrative actions, all these should be followed. Now here the philosophical basis, as it is talking about power, and we can talk about justice and all these things. So here you can talk about is, first of all, the philosophers like Kautilya, Machiavelli, Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes. They will talk about that the state will use harsh actions for security purpose, and for that purpose they can use wrong means, okay, and they are justifying that, okay, these philosophers. Along with that you can talk about is utilitarian principle. Again we can talk about is greatest good to the greatest number of people. This principle is also involved. But Kant we can say that human dignity principle goes against, we can say that. Then Mahatma Gandhi, okay, so Mahatma Gandhi will talk about purity of means, okay, he says that means are as important as, we can say that, ends. Means are as important as ends, Mahatma Gandhi. So in conclusion what we can mention is, in constitutional democracy, arms are fair only when both the intent, that is purpose, and the manner of their use is, we can say, just. दोनों जस्ट होना चाहिए, सिर्फ पर्पस नहीं, तो वो कैसे यूज किया जाएगा, ठीक है, आर्म्स जो है, मतलब पावर हियर वी कैन से दैट. सो इन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल डेमोक्रेसी दिस शुड बी द फोकस. दिस इज द वे वी शुड टॉक अबाउट दिस क्वेश्चन. एंड if you want to give the context to international governance, then you can talk about the war, the arms exports and all these things happening, but that is a separate question. Here focus should be on exercising power, right? Citing the serious adverse effect of long term medication, the doctor convinces family of a female patient for a surgery. This leads to patient to reluctantly consent for surgery, though her original choice was to opt for medication. Explain the concept of paternalism and beneficence by analyzing doctor's action. Again we can say medical ethics. I told you two questions were from medical ethics, skeletal deformity and this one, and there is one case study exactly about this concept only. ठीक है, वहां पे भी एक सर्जरी होता है, सर्जरी में पेशेंट जो है अनकॉन्शियस है अंडर द एनेस्थीसिया, इन्फ्लुएंस ऑफ एनेस्थीसिया, और जब डॉक्टर को लगता है कि वहां पे एक ट्यूमर है, दैट कैन बी मैलिग्नेंट ट्यूमर, तो ये जो है डॉक्टर उनके रिलेटिव्स का कॉन्सेंट लेते हैं और वो जो है हिस्टेरेक्टोमी कर देते हैं, ठीक है, यूटेरस रिमूवल वाला साइमल्टेनियसली। अब ये पेशेंट का इन्फॉर्म चॉइस नहीं है, right? So here the concept of paternalism involved and beneficence both are in conflicting situations. We can say that first you define them, both term you define, okay, beneficence and paternalism. क्या definitions है? Paternalism थोड़ा standard definition होना चाहिए, that's why I am reading it out. Yes, interfering or overriding a competent person's, interfering or overriding a competent person's autonomous choice for her perceived benefits. Most of the time we relate this concept with like parents taking all decisions for their children's welfare benefits, but many a times you can see when the child is now adult, still parents think that कि हम ही उनके बारे में decision लेंगे, तो उसी को paternalism बोलते हैं कि वो जो गलत हो जाता है। एक when the child has grown up and it is now more than 18 years of age, it is adult, so the decisions taken by that child, they should be informed decision by the child. He is now competent, he has its moral agency, moral faculty to take the decisions, and that's why the decisions which are taken by the parents in that case on behalf of children will be influenced by this paternalism concept. On the other hand, we can say that beneficence mostly concept from the, we can say that, medical ethics. Now here the ethical obligation of doctor to promote patient's welfare, prevent harm and act in her best medical interest, we can say that, this is called as beneficence. Now here the analysis of the doctors, okay, analysis of doctors' actions. You should talk about all that medical ethics concept, we can say that, doctor's action. First you can talk about is the concept of beneficence. The surgery may avoid serious long-term medication, and we can say that the harmful effect of that long term medication that can be avoided, तो इसीलिए शायद डॉक्टर ने जो है एडवाइस किया होगा, first thing. Second, non malfeasance, that means it is the doctor's duty to explain the harm of long term medication and also disclose the risk associated with the surgery. That should be explained by the doctor, whether it is doing or not, that should be analyzed. Then autonomy, it is very important, okay, why? Because the patient's informed preference should be respected by the doctor. It is very important principle in medical ethics. Then we can talk about paternalism. Here the doctor is using family to persuade her, it reflects soft coercive paternalism, right? Then dignity, agency and informed consent. Yes, the competent adult, the patient is competent adult, we can say that, and should remain primary decision maker in these we can say that surgeries and all that medical treatment. Many times you may have seen that this is misused by the families also, like the female infanticides that happens, or we can say abortion cases. वहाँ पे सोनोग्राफी किया जाता है और जब पता चलता है कि लड़की है तो वहाँ पर अबॉर्शन के लिए प्रेशराइज किया जाता है फैमिली द्वारा, ठीक है, तो ये मिसयूज भी होता है बहुत ज़्यादा, और यहाँ पे बॉडीली इंटीग्रिटी एंड बॉडीली ऑटोनॉमी इज बेसिकली वायलेटेड. तो प्रोफेशनलिज्म in terms of doctors should provide expert advice and not influence the decisions of the patients. That is professionalism. Now what should have been the standard approach? फिर से वही चीज़ है, ठीक है, तो हम बोल सकते हैं कि मेडिकल एक्सपर्टीज ऑफ डॉक्टर प्लस the doctor should respect the autonomy, we can say that, the preferences of the patient, so inform autonomous choice ultimately of the patient, we can say. So what is the philosophical basis here? Philosophical basis is Kantian ethics will say that dignity principle, treating patient in ends themselves, and liberty principle of J.S. Mill, we can say that. What liberty principle says? It supports individual autonomy, decisions over own body, we can say that. That is liberty principle. In conclusion, beneficence should guide the medical advice but not override the autonomy of competent patients. So same kind of, let's say, topic is there, so content will be also similar, we can say that. Now the next question 4a, 4b, efficiency is doing things right while effectiveness is doing the right thing. How do you strike the balance? You can see again balance between the two to enhance productivity. Yes, So efficiency is, we can say that, doing things right. Efficiency is about, we can say, reducing cost, time and resources involved. ठीक है, तो efficient use of all these things will say efficiency. It is about, we can say that, doing things right. And effectiveness, it is more about, we can say, right objectives and focus is on outcome. Focus is on outcome. Okay. Then we can also talk about here, the focus is more on process, efficient process. The focus is on, we can say that, outcome here again, how effective it is there. Here we can say that the values, what kind of values are involved. If we are trying to compare in the introduction, the focus is on, we can say that, the cost, time and output. Same thing we can talk about is cost, time and output. More output, less cost. Okay, cost benefit ratio focus. Here focus is on impact. Focus is on, we can say that, the quality. Focus is on relevance. Okay, focus is on relevance. This is, we can say, more qualitative, more quantitative aspect. ऐसे भी हम बोल सकते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, दोनों जगह पे आप एग्जाम्पल दीजिए. फॉर एफिशिएंसी यू कैन टॉक अबाउट इज, वी कैन से, टाइम बाउंड. एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव एग्जाम्पल दीजिए क्योंकि हम फोकस यहाँ पे एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव. टाइम बाउंड डिस्पोजल ऑफ grievances. Okay, grievances of citizen. And in effectiveness, what you can mention is actually addressing citizens problem. Okay, actually addressing citizens problem, not only the grievances. ठीक है, जो प्रॉब्लम है, रूट कॉज, उसको डील करना, उसको इफेक्टिव बेस बोलते हैं. हाउ टू बैलेंस बोथ. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे फोकस आपको क्या करना है, हाउ टू बैलेंस बोथ. फर्स्ट, यू शुड प्रायोरिटाइज द राइट गोल्स. सो फोकस शुड बी ऑन, वी कैन से दैट, स्मार्ट गोल्स. डिजाइनिंग स्मार्ट गोल्स. व्हाट आर स्मार्ट गोल्स? थोड़े से कीवर्ड्स यूज करना सीख लो आंसर में, राइट. स्मार्ट गोल्स. सो व्हाट इज द फुल फॉर्म? एस इज फॉर स्पेसिफिक. ये हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने भी बोला हुआ है कई जगह पे. मेजरेबल आउटकम्स. ठीक है. A is, we can say that, for let's say achievable targets, achievable goals, right. Then R is, we can say that, R is for relevant. R is for relevant goals, and T is for time bound. ठीक है, time bound goals. So this is the way smart goals you can mention. As a part of how to balance. Then outcome based planning, that you can mention. Outcome based planning should be there. Then optimal resource allocation, for, we can say that, efficient allocation of resources, minimum resources are required. Then use of technology to reform the process, again efficiency is maintained. Delegation and decentralization, so that less time is we can say involved in process. Overall delivery of services. Monitoring and feedback should be there. And then we can say ethical safeguards. That means efficiency must not compromise equity. It must not compromise the dignity, due process and environmental sustainability. Administrative example, you can simply give the example of, like, for example, disaster management is there, and we have to, we can say that, give relief distribution. Now how we are talking about efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency, we can say that, timely, it is reaching to the people, and low cost of, we can say that, logistical cost. That is efficiency. Effectiveness, when we are maintaining fairness in relief dispersal, and we can say that, prioritize vulnerable sections. Okay, so now this is qualitative outcome orientation. This is the way we should talk about example. So good governance requires not merely, it is not merely about doing more things with less, not only efficiency, but we can say doing what matters and doing it well, effectiveness. So this is the way we balance it and ensure productivity. Then we can talk about, usually schools working in remote areas do not fully comply with the government regulations. अब ये न्यूज़ में भी था, देखो ये CJP की जो वर्कर्स है, ठीक है, तो सीजेपी के हेड और वो सब जो लोग हैं अलग अलग स्कूल्स पे जाके बात कर रहे हैं या उनका इंस्पेक्शंस कर रहे हैं, उनको बहुत सारे जो लोकल लोगों ने उन पे वायलेंस भी हुआ है, राइट। तो अभी न्यूज़ में चल रहा है, बहुत सारे वीडियोस आपने देखे होंगे। तो समहाउ इट इज़ रिलेटेड टू द स्टेटस ऑफ गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स इन रूरल एरियाज। Now there are practical problems that these schools are facing, right? Remote areas में जो है they are not fully complying with the government regulations. However, if rules are enforced strictly, it would lead to most schools closing down. And how should administrators strike balance between enforcement of rules and educational rights of children? This is, we can say, practical dilemma, practical ethical and administrative challenges faced by the administration. But what happens is in remote areas there is lack of connectivity, lack of, we can say that the infrastructural gaps are there, the sufficient teachers are not available, and we can say that in terms of digital connectivity and all these things. So legal compliances, procedural compliances, all these becomes problems. So here what you should do is, we can say that classify them first. Classify, we can say that the violations by the schools. What kind of classification can be done into two categories? For one, we can say that which requires immediate attention, we can say. So they are, we can say that critical violations, and second is remediable violations, like for example procedural lapses, ठीक है। कोई एक मतलब फॉर्म भरना चाहिए उन्होंने रेगुलर और सब चीज़ें जो है वो नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, ठीक है, ड्यू टू, वी कैन से, लैक ऑफ कनेक्टिविटी। सो दे कैन बी आस्क्ड फॉर, वी कैन से दैट टाइम बाउंड करेक्शन, इट कैन हैपन, राइट। रिमोट एरिया है, टाइम बाउंड करेक्शन, बट क्रिटिकल, लाइक चिल्ड्रन सेफ्टी, चिल्ड्रन सेफ्टी, तो यहाँ पर जो है इमीडिएट इंटरवेंशन चाहिए, इमीडिएट इंटरवेंशन शुड बी देयर। Okay, so this is the way classify violation, we have to balance. Then what you can do is proportionate actions, proportionality. Again I told you the similar kind of administrative actions. First you should send the advisory, then we can say that assist these schools, and then improvement plans should be suggested to the schools. If they are not following, then initially there should be warning, and then we can talk about they can be even penalized, it can act as a deterrence, and the closure of schools should be last resort. Proportionality, sequence of actions you can take. Then administrative support should be simultaneously given in terms of funds, then administrative facilities should be made available to the children. Okay, so these things should be ensured. Then we can talk about is ethical basis. What should be the ethical basis for that particular, let's say, course of action? Justice as a fairness, John Rawls, because children in remote areas will require some kind of priority treatment. It also involves the equity principle, because again remote areas are there, regional, we can say that regionally backward area may be there, ठीक है, तो ये सब जो है prioritized treatment is required. Then rules should serve the right to quality education and not defeating their purpose itself. So this is the way, in conclusion, we can talk, right? Now next question. In international relations, ethical considerations are often subjugated to strategic interest of nation states, discussed from the ethical perspective. Now this is, we can say that common in international relations. What happens is, we can say national interest on one hand, national interest is there, versus we can say human rights. This is a common dilemma faced in international level, right? Common observations in recent times, we can talk about common observations. First you can talk about is refugee crisis. Syrian refugee crisis you can talk about is example, like many European countries, they did not give refuge to the refugees. National interest, we can say that example you can talk about. Then economic interest, ठीक है, ये national security उन्होंने बोला, economic interest are there. So for economic interest, for example exploitation of resources, environmental degradation. अब इसमें प्रॉब्लम क्या है? एनवायरमेंटल डिग्रेडेशन होने की वजह से क्लाइमेट चेंज, सी लेवल राइज. सो हु आर एट रिसीविंग एंड? इट इज द स्मॉल आइलैंड नेशंस. उनकी कोई गलती नहीं है, फिर भी उन पे इम्पैक्ट हो रहा है इकोनॉमिक इंटरेस्ट, नेशन स्टेट्स जो है स्ट्रेटेजिक इंटरेस्ट पे फोकस करता है और इसलिए एथिकल कंसिडरेशन दे आर सब्जुगेटेड. देन यू कैन गिव एग्जांपल ऑफ लाइक एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी. एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी के लिए हम क्या कर रहे हैं? The people are having, we can say that relations with what? Dictatorships. In Gulf countries, dictatorships, right? Then geopolitical considerations. So many times we can see that United Nations Human Rights Commissions के जो भी हम जो resolutions होते हैं उसमें सेलेक्टिव साइलेंस ऑन पार्टनर कंट्रीज वायलेशंस ऑन ह्यूमन राइट्स हम देखते हैं. तो ये आर्म्स एक्सपोर्ट्स, पॉसिबल डिस्टर्बेंस ऑफ रीजनल पीस इज नॉट कंसिडर्ड एज एथिकल कंसिडरेशन in arms exports. So all these let's say recent considerations you can talk about. Now ethical perspective, discuss from the ethical perspective. It is saying first we can say that moral realism. Now, moral realism, Kautilya, Machiavelli, there Hobbes is there. They will talk about moral realism. Focus on national interest. Okay, focus is on national interest, right? Protecting life of the people, citizens' interest. Then it also talks about like might is right. Might is right principle. Like for example, we can talk about is US foreign policy, international relations, right? Foreign policy. Like sanctions and all these things, right? Economic sanctions on all these things. So that you can mention. Then you can talk about second is moral idealism. Right, moral idealism. Kant, Rabindranath Tagore, Mahatma Gandhi. So they will talk about this principle, following this principle. Like Kant, principle of perpetual peace. They can be achieved only by respecting the dignity of people, international cooperation. Tagore and Gandhiji favored humanism over nationalism. These principles you can talk about. Then third is we can talk about is cosmopolitan ethics. Okay, cosmopolitan ethics. So cosmopolitan ethics will say that humanity over national interest. It goes beyond boundaries, national boundaries, national interest. Okay, so this is the way you should talk about giving references to philosophers. What should be balanced approach? You give example of India, enlightened national interest. Our external affairs minister will talk about this. Enlightened national interest. What we have this national security plus strategic autonomy plus human dignity plus respect for international law plus reciprocity plus global common good. This is we can say enlightened national interest that India follows. In conclusion, we can say that if a country is purely following national interest in international relations, then we can say that it is going to create some problems negatively. It will be called double standard, loss of credibility, mistrust. It will create instability and decline in global order. But if we focus on ethical consideration, ethical conduct, it will result in soft power, legitimacy, then trust and durable partnerships. And India is focusing on that. ऐसे हम example दे सकते हैं. Okay, so this is we can say that 5B 6A देखते हैं क्या बोला है. On the request of personal assistant. यहाँ पे ना student confuse हो गए हैं बहुत बार. Okay, on the request of personal assistant, district magistrate stops transfer of school teacher who takes private tuition of his daughter. अब ये his daughter ना student ने कुछ लोगों ने किया होगा district magistrate की daughter है या PA की daughter है. Ideally ये PA की daughter होनी चाहिए क्योंकि request PA कर रहा है. ठीक है, अगर DM की daughter है उनका ट्यूशन दे रहा है तो DM खुद ही डिसीजन लेगा ना, PA के रिक्वेस्ट क्यों कर सुनने का वहाँ पे, राइट. ये लॉजिक यूज करो. डायग्नोज विथ लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटी. In this context, discuss the aspect of empathy versus compliance with the strict rules. Again, we can say law versus compassion, रूल्स वर्सेस कंपैशन, ठीक है, ये डायलेमा हो गया यहाँ पर, एथिकल डायलेमा। सो प्रॉब्लम्स क्या है इसमें, 4 प्रॉब्लम्स, एथिकल कंसर्न्स आप बता दीजिए, ठीक है। फेवरेटिज्म, फेवरेटिज्म है, गोज अगेंस्ट वी कैन से दैट इम्पार्शियलिटी, यहाँ पे सिविल सर्विस वैल्यूज बताने से, ठीक है, इम्पार्शियलिटी, ऑब्जेक्टिविटी, फेवरेटिज्म। देन वी कैन से दैट, वी कैन से अगेंस्ट rule of law, discretion is misused here, against rule of law we can say that, preferential treatment. Then we can say procedural injustice, procedural injustice हो रहा है यहाँ पर। बाकी जो लोग हैं उनके कंपटीशन में अगर देखोगे तो ये injustice है उनके लिए। Then we can talk about is conflict of interest, खुद का पीए है तो कहीं ना कहीं वो आगे चल के वो उसको फेवर करेगा, तो ये इन रिटर्न हमें भी फेवर करेगा, इसलिए उसके लिए हम एक काइंड ऑफ फेवर कर रहे हैं। कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट हो रहा है, सॉरी, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट, पर्सनल इंटरेस्ट इन्फ्लुएंसिंग द पब्लिक ड्यूटी। देन अप्रोप्रिएट एक्शंस, बेसिकली ऐसे सिचुएशन में अगर लीगल प्रोविजंस में प्रोवाइड है, फिट हो रहा है तो आप अलाउ करिए, अदरवाइज यू शुड नॉट अलाउ। अल्टरनेट ट्यूटर शुड बी अपॉइंटेड, आस्क्ड फॉर पीए, ठीक है, एक्सपर्ट हु इज एक्सपर्ट इन स्पेशल लर्निंग नीड्स। अब ये ट्यूटर की ज़रूरत कब पड़ती है, जब स्कूल में सपोर्ट ठीक से नहीं मिलता है, तो एंश्योरिंग अप्रोप्रिएट स्कूल सपोर्ट फॉर द चाइल्ड विथ स्पेशल नीड्स। फिलोसॉफी हियर फोकस शुड बी ऑन कंपैशन, तो एथिक्स ऑफ केयर, ठीक है, एथिक्स ऑफ केयर, कैरोल गिलिगन, रिस्पॉन्सिव टू द स्पेशल नीड्स ऑफ द चाइल्ड। जस्टिस एज अ फेयरनेस, जॉन रॉल्स, कांत, यूनिवर्सल एक्शंस। Action should be, human actions should be such actions that will be considered as universal action, they will become universal action. Now ethical administration is the administration that is compassionate and reasoned discretion within rule of law, ऐसे हम उसको बोलेंगे। Then we can talk about is, we can say 6th question, 6b, yes. Some moral philosophers argue that spending some of your resources without significantly affecting your financial stability to help other people is, we can say that, your moral duty and not merely charity. अब यहाँ पे फिर से explain distinction between duty and charity, ठीक है। तो सिंपली टेबल बना के आपको बताना है, टाइम कम होगा आपको, ये लास्ट क्वेश्चन होगा, तो टेबल बना के बता दो क्या है, क्यों ऐसे बोल रहा है ये। यस, इवन पीटर सिंगर्स आर्ग्यूमेंट ऑन मोरल ऑब्लिगेशन सेज दैट, अगर आपका खुद का फाइनेंशियल डिफिकल्टीज में आप जाने नहीं वाले हैं, तो आपके पास एक्स्ट्रा मनी है, financially you can help the other person, then you should do that as a moral duty, not as a charity. Now you see most of the people, even religion says that you should do charity and all, most of the people do that as a part of charity and not as a moral obligation or duty. And if you do that as a moral obligation, it will have long lasting impact, we can say that, on that other person. ठीक है, तो differences बताते चलिए। यहाँ पर जो हम बोलेंगे कि it is ought to be, और यहाँ पर क्या है, optional है, ठीक है, चैरिटी इज ऑप्शनल वेल ड्यूटी इज ऑट टू बी। मोरल ऑब्लिगेशन आ जाएगा यहाँ पर, ठीक है, ड्यूटी में यहाँ पे क्या आएगा, जेनरेसिटी, इट विल रिफ्लेक्ट जेनरेसिटी ऑफ द पर्सन। देन हियर द फेलियर ऑफ डूइंग दिस मोरल ड्यूटी विल इनवाइट द मोरल क्रिटिसिज्म। इन हमारे इनसाइड वी हैव द कॉन्शियंस, राइट, कॉन्शियंस विल क्रिटिसाइज, मोरल क्रिटिसिज्म। फेलियर विल नॉट इम्प्लाई एनी काइंड ऑफ रॉन्ग डूइंग। आप चैरिटी नहीं करते हैं तो इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि आप कुछ गलत कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। देन हियर इट इज लिंक्ड टू जस्टिस एंड वी कैन से दैट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी। दिस इज लिंक्ड टू, वी कैन से दैट, कंपैशन एंड अल्ट्रुइज्म। एग्जाम्पल्स, पेइंग, वी कैन से दैट, फेयर वेजेस टू द वर्कर्स एज एन एम्प्लॉयर, दिस इज आवर मोरल ड्यूटी। यू हैव मनी, यू पे इट, ठीक है, फेयर वेजेस। वहाँ पे अगर आप सोचोगे तो हम प्रॉफिट बढ़ाएंगे, कम पैसे देंगे वेजेस के लिए, तो ये मोरल ड्यूटी के अगेंस्ट है, ठीक है। देन वी कैन टॉक अबाउट इज हियर वॉलेंट्री डोनेशंस एट द चैरिटी इवेंट, उसको हम क्या बोलेंगे, चैरिटी बोलेंगे, ठीक है, या फिर कोई भी एनजीओ को डोनेशन दे देना, उसको भी हम चैरिटी बोल देंगे, नॉट एज अ मोरल ऑब्लिगेशंस। नाउ व्हाई ड्यूटी शुड बी प्रेफर्स हियर, द फोकस शुड बी ऑन ड्यूटी इंस्टेड ऑफ चैरिटी, व्हाई, ठीक है। तो यहाँ पर आप थोड़ा सा एथिकल एनालिसिस करके बताइए। फर्स्ट, बेनिफिसेंस, हेल्पिंग द अदर पर्सन is very important, we can say that, like for example helping road accident victims, being a good Samaritan, ठीक है, तो ये भी हम बोल सकते हैं, या फिर हम सिंपल बोल सकते हैं कि आपके पास एक्स्ट्रा मनी एंड यू आर हेल्पिंग द अदर पर्सन in their, we can say that, needy time period. Then distributive justice, we can say that paying taxes honestly should be also moral duty along with legal duty. Then we can talk about is human dignity principle. Kant is involved here. Hunger, famine in different parts of the world, Western Africa, Gaza in, we can say that, Israel, that situations are arising. Human dignity principle is involved. Shared humanity concept is also involved. Mahatma Gandhi's Sarvodaya and trusteeship concept is also involved, part of moral duty. So ultimately we can say that positive moral duty arising from beneficence, justice and shared humanity. This is the way we can mention from the ethical perspective. Now the case studies part, very interesting. First case study, you can see that again the concept of that paternalism that we said, it is involved here. So what is said here, देखिए हर केस स्टडी में आपको फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन मोस्टली एथिकल इश्यूज है, ठीक है। जब आपको पता चल गया है कि एथिकल इशू पूछा हुआ है, तो जब फर्स्ट टाइम आप केस स्टडी पढ़ रहे हैं, देयर एंड देयर इटसेल्फ यू शुड आइडेंटिफाई एथिकल इश्यूज, ताकि आपको 2 बार पढ़ने की टाइम बच जाएगा, ठीक है। यस, सो लता, अ मदर ऑफ 2 चिल्ड्रन, एडमिटेड टू हॉस्पिटल. डॉक्टर मानसी एग्जामाइंड लता, रिकमेंडेड. सिस्टर इन लॉ इज ऑल्सो देयर अकम्पनिंग सुजाता, ठीक है। तो डॉक्टर मानसी एग्जामाइन लता एंड रिकमेंडेड डायग्नोस्टिक लेप्रोस्कोपी, ठीक है। तो लताज कॉन्सेंट वाज टेकन टू कंडक्ट द मेडिकल प्रोसीजर अंडर जनरल एनेस्थीसिया, ठीक है। लेप्रोस्कोपी कर दिया एंड एक्यूट एब्डोमिनल पेन है, ठीक है। देन ड्यूरिंग द लेप्रोस्कोपी डॉक्टर मानसीज टीम डिस्कवर्ड ट्यूमर इन लताज यूटेरस, ठीक है। तो ये ट्यूमर है. अ क्लोजर एग्जामिनेशन सजेस्टेड दैट ट्यूमर कुड बी मैलिग्नेंट, कुड बी बोल रहा है, ठीक है, पॉसिबिलिटी मैलिग्नेंट, हार्मफुल. One option before Dr. Mansi was to extract sample for biopsy. In that case, if the tumor was malignant, Lata would have to undergo another surgery for removal of her uterus. Alternative was to remove uterus immediately. Dr. Mansi had to take quick decision. ठीक है. So as Lata was under general anesthesia, Dr. Mansi explained the situation to Sujata, and Sujata agreed with Dr. Mansi's recommendation for hysterectomy, removal of uterus altogether, to avoid risk and pain of undergoing another surgery. Dr. Mansi removed Lata's uterus after receiving Sujata's consent in writing. Now Lata was informed this after next day, and she was very upset and felt betrayed as she had not consented for removal of uterus. ठीक है, यूटेरस जो है यहाँ पर वो बॉडीली इंटीग्रिटी हो या रिप्रोडक्टिव राइट से लिंक्ड है. तो यहाँ पर हम एथिकल इश्यूज में क्या बोलेंगे कि लैक ऑफ इन्फॉर्म चॉइस, ठीक है, पेशेंट्स ऑटोनॉमी इज वायलेटेड हियर, लैक ऑफ इन्फॉर्म चॉइस वाज देयर. देन बॉडीली इंटीग्रिटी इज आल्सो वायलेटेड, ठीक है, उनको बिना पूछे आप बॉडी से कोई पार्ट निकाल दे रहे हो, बॉडी. Yes, let's continue. Now, yes, what I was telling is basically the surrogate consent is unethical when the patient is, we can say that, not facing the life-threatening situation. So she could have been, let's say, given the consent, not the surrogate consent. Medical paternalism by Dr. Mansi here. Yes, that is true. जो theory part में हमने देखा ना paternalism, same medical ethics. यहाँ पे भी डॉक्टर मानसी ने क्या किया है, एक काइंड ऑफ पैटर्नलिज्म, पैटर्नलिस्टिक एटीट्यूड है यहाँ पर डॉक्टर मानसी का. Instead of waiting for the consent of adult patient, we can say that she is doing that by somehow softly coercing the patient's relatives, we can say that, family members. Then breach of trust in doctor patient relationship, ठीक है, यहाँ पे वो she is, we can say that, she is upset here, she feels betrayed, breach of trust, ठीक है. तो ये सारे हो गए आपके एथिकल इश्यूज. जब आप पढ़ रहे हो तो आपको एथिकल इश्यूज साइमल्टेनियसली आइडेंटिफाई करना है. डिस्कस द मोरल कंडक्ट ऑफ डॉक्टर इन दिस सिचुएशन. द मोरल कंडक्ट, आर्ग्यूमेंट इन सपोर्ट, आर्ग्यूमेंट अगेंस्ट, दोनों देने हैं. आर्ग्यूमेंट इन सपोर्ट वी कैन टॉक अबाउट इज शी एक्टेड इन बेनिफिसेंस एंड प्रोफेशनल कंसर्न फॉर द पेशेंट. ऑल्सो एक्शंस वेयर सेल्फलेस एक्शंस, ठीक है, हमें यहाँ पे हम कंसिडर करेंगे कि सेल्फलेस एक्शंस थे, नॉट फॉर पर्सनल गेन. एंड रिटन कॉन्सेंट वॉज डिराइव्ड फ्रॉम द, we can say that, relative, that is here the sister-in-law. But argument against, we can say that they are dominant. The Lata's consent was not for hysterectomy, लेप्रोस्कोपी के लिए था, तो ये तो against medical ethics है. Then suspected malignancy is not equal to actual, we can say that, life-threatening conditions. Then it is not life-threatening situation, so that's why she can wait for the person to give the consent. तो ये सब चीज़ें हम आर्ग्यूमेंट अगेंस्ट देंगे. तो आइडियल कंडक्ट क्या होना चाहिए, लेप्रोस्कोपी कंडक्ट करना है, बायोप्सी के लिए वो जो है some part of that uterus can be taken, inform Lata after recovery and explain her let's say diagnosis and the risk associated with the surgery, obtain informed consent and accordingly provide the treatment. So Dr. Mansi here in this case beneficence within the boundary of patient autonomy except in genuine emergency cases. We can say that this is the way she should have acted. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पर ethical concept whatever the concepts or we can say philosophical aspects are involved, you should be writing like this. Again ethical issues are asked. Let's see what is that. Ravi, a senior police officer, vast experience in riot control and cyber policing. Since 1 year he has been let's say SP of a district, his history of rioting. Last year Ravi has sought installation of AI enabled software for predictive policing. This system has been operational for approximately 6 months. The new system applies algorithm for capturing biometric data of persons, crowd swiftly relating to data library. Then enabled the police to identify persons involved in various crimes. So this is basically efficiently we can say helping, but the system has identified an immigrant and low income neighborhood as center of gang violence, drug trafficking. Immigrant and low income. Okay, aided by AI analysis, local police have focused its patrolling, preventive detentions, establishing checkposts. Consequently, public order and law enforcement has visibly improved. Efficiency in the law enforcement. Last week, some community leaders, civil rights lawyers and human rights activists visited Ravi's office. They submitted a memorandum that new system is faulty based on incorrect historical data caused by social biases, discriminatory policing, and we can say memorandum also alleged, we can say that increased surveillance has created climate of tension among the residents. This feeling itself aggravated by the fact that residents are not aware of the data noted against their names. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे what are the ethical issues? So again similar kind of ethical issues that we can talk about. Yes, they are coming. Yes, Sandeep Kumar, all questions are coming with current affairs and static. Yes, initially only at the start of this video I told you case studies as well as we can say theory questions somehow related to current context, contemporary developments. So yes, what I am trying to say here is yes, AI enabled policing on one hand efficiency, it will result into efficiency, but versus dilemma is related to right based accountable policing. Now what are the ethical issues? First of all, algorithmic bias. ठीक है, तो algorithmic bias will be there in the AI technology, prejudices based on historical data. Then historical bias, we can say that data bias, क्योंकि वही data feed कर रहे हैं, तो past में police has criminalized certain kinds of community, poor communities, vulnerable sections, minorities. ठीक है, तो वो data feed किया जा रहा है, तो वो outcome उसी पे focus करेगा. Then selection and sampling bias, data showing immigrants and low income communities disproportionately. तो ये सैम्पलिंग बायस हो गया. देन वी कैन से दैट ऑटोनॉमी बायस इज देयर, ऑफिसर्स ट्रस्टिंग कंप्लीटली ऑन एआई आउटकम्स विदाउट देयर ऑटोनॉमस जजमेंट. ठीक है, तो दैट इज गोइंग टू बी एथिकल इशू. प्राइवेसी कंसर्न्स, वी कैन से दैट बायोमेट्रिक एंड वी कैन से फेशियल डेटा is being collected, profiling can be done by the police officials. So we can say that is resulting in we can say that privacy concerns. Puttaswamy judgment you can give. ठीक है, तो as a reference. Then opacity, how data is collected and stored by the law enforcement agencies. Again there is lack of transparency. Accountability gap, who should be held responsible when there is breach of data and all these things. So whether it is algorithm officer, developer, or we can say police officer or overall administration, who should be held accountable. Then violation of dignity and autonomy, continuous surveillance of the people will result into violation of dignity. Then philosophical basis, John Rawls and Kantian ethics, we can say people should be treated ends in themselves and not merely as a data points for crime data, crime control, we can say that, or following the principles of legality, necessity, proportionality and accountability, ye principles, fairness, balancing utilitarian considerations of crime prevention with the deontological obligations of dignity and we can say that privacy. So ultimately the alternatives for the Ravi, ठीक है, यहाँ पे क्या पूछा है, what are the alternatives available for Ravi if you are in that position, justify the actions, कौन सा action हम most appropriate बोलेंगे. So of course two actions we can simply suggest as extreme two actions, like first, continue with the system unchanged, second, immediately discontinue the AI policing. These two merits and demerits alternatively you can give. ठीक है, तो एक जो एक्सट्रीम एक्शंस हम देते हैं ऑप्शंस की तरह, थर्ड इज मोस्ट अप्रोप्रिएट ऑप्शन दैट वी गिव, कंटिन्यू विद सेफगार्ड्स एंड इंडिपेंडेंट रिव्यू. ठीक है, तो एआई कंटिन्यू करना है बट यहाँ पर हमें सेफगार्ड्स चाहिए, इंडिपेंडेंट रिव्यू भी चाहिए उसका. ठीक है, तो क्यों रीजंस हमने अभी जो बात की थी, एथिकल रीजंस देने यहाँ पे, जस्टिस एज अ फेयरनेस, कांतियन एथिक्स, balancing utilitarian consideration with deontological obligations and principles of legality, necessity, proportionality and fairness and accountability. In conclusion, you can mention that we can have citizens' trust and legitimacy of police by ensuring efficient law enforcement plus constitutional rights plus algorithmic fairness and accountable human judgment. So this is the way we should talk about this AI driven policing, emerging and we can say that contemporary challenge that is in news, we can say that. Again, ethical issues involved. ठीक है, तो पढ़ते वक्त ही हमें ध्यान देना है. सीमा, senior bureaucrat with a reputation of honesty and professional integrity. She has been recently posted as district collector in Surindar district, Surindar Nagar, where large industrial area is being established. New industrial area had caused many farmers to submit application for change of land use to convert their farmland for residential areas. This is usually large backlog that applications awaiting process. Backlog हो गया है. Seema noticed that some applications had been approved selectively with no visible chronological pattern, and case files show few complaints of some approvals being subject to receipt of large bribes from the applicants. तो यहाँ पर ब्राइब लिया जा रहा है, करप्शन हो रहा है और ये सब चीज़ें हैं, डिले हो रहा है. ठीक है, एंड पीपल आर नॉट हैप्पी विद द एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. तो हर साल एक क्वेश्चन होता ही है, मैंने बताया, corruption related, you are honest officer, there is pressure on you. So in that situation you have to hold on to your, we can say, moral courage of conviction should be there in your actions, and along with that institutional reforms should be taken so that in future even if you are transferred, then the procedure is, we can say that, or process is streamlined. So in this situation, what are, we can say that, ethical issues? There is lack of probity and integrity, bribes are being taken by the officials. Then there is lack of rule of law, because selective approvals are there, lack of fairness and justice, genuine applicants are denied, they are suffering, lack of accountability, abuse of discretionary power by the officials. Then we can say poor workplace ethics, because there is intimidation, the honest officials, they are not allowed to speak. ठीक है, तो जो करप्ट ऑफिशियल्स है वो उनकी वजह से प्रॉब्लम है. वीक गवर्नेंस, बिकॉज करप्शन इज क्रिएटिंग बैकलॉग, डिलेज एंड वी कैन से पब्लिक डिससेटिस्फैक्शन. ये सारे हो गए एथिकल इश्यूज. Then what you can mention is the options available to SEMA as a second part, we can say that, and then recommended options and justified. Ignore the issue altogether and continue to work as it is going on. Then launch an aggressive investigation immediately. This second option. Third is recommended, we can say, institutional reforms with calibrated response, calibrated enforcement. So that is, we can say, most appropriate. Why? Justice, first of all, punishing the wrongdoers. Second, setting the accountability in administration, that whatever the bribe takers, officials are there, against them inquiry is there and action is taken. Third is, we can say that reason, utilitarianism, maximum welfare by restoring efficient land approvals. Impartiality and objectivity as civil service values, treating every applicant equal. Virtue ethics, we can say that, courage, integrity, prudence and strong character of SEMA. Now here, additional aspect you can write in your answer as systemic and institutional reforms that should be initiated. तो सब कुछ ट्रांसपेरेंट होना चाहिए, ऑनलाइन कर दो, चेंज ऑफ लैंड यूज प्रोसीजर ऑनलाइन पोर्टल होना चाहिए, डिजिटल प्रोसेसिंग. देन रैंडम फाइल एलोकेशन so that there is reducing discretion, time bound service delivery, clearing the backlog. And then we can say public dashboard displaying application status, transparency, and we can say improving quality of service delivery. CCTV in office and audit trails, strengthening accountability. And then we can say that citizen grievance portal should be enacted so that the people are able to, we can say, provide their grievances and administration is acting on them. In conclusion, SEMA is showing the transformational leadership by acting like this, and through, we can say, firm enforcement of rules, laws, regulations and institutional reforms. ठीक है. In this manner we can talk about this case study. Then next case study is, we can say here again you can talk about is what are the options available is asked, and discuss the ethics of using technology as gatekeeper. So in this case study I will briefly tell you that there is PDS system for which the biometrics is being used. In hilly areas this is being let's say implemented, but there are failures. ठीक है, फिंगरप्रिंट्स जो है बेनिफिशियरीज के नहीं मिल पा रहे हैं, तो उनको राशन नहीं मिल रहा है, राइट. द सिस्टम स्पेशली चिल्ड्रन, मैनुअल्स लेबरर एंड सीनियर सिटीजन्स, दे आर फेसिंग प्रॉब्लम. एंड ऑल्सो ड्यू टू लो वाईफाई कनेक्टिविटी कभी कभी जो है बायोमेट्रिक नहीं हो पाता है, इसलिए उनको पीडीएस से फूड नहीं मिल रहा है. तो ऐसे सिचुएशन में क्या ऑप्शंस है आपके पास, ऐसे वो पूछ रहा है. ठीक है, तो लेट्स टॉक अबाउट दैट ऑप्शंस. व्हाट आर द ऑप्शंस हियर? So first of all you should know that technological failure should not result into exclusion of beneficiaries. So it will go against, we can say, the welfare state concept and the responsibility or social justice concept. Then we can talk about options. First, continue with the strict biometric authentication, extreme option. Second, allow distributors complete discretion on the ground, again extreme option. Third is the recommended option. We can say that biometric system with accountable alternatives. In this situation, what should be allowed is basically the biometric authentication. If it is failing, then offline authentication or OTP generation on the mobile phone, and registering verified exemptions and delivering the ration. Along with that, we can say that subsequent auditing should be done, and it should be checked that exceptions are aligned with the, we can say that appropriate beneficiaries and not the we can say that unintended beneficiaries. So ultimately, technology plus human dignity, human discretion plus documentation plus audit, we can say that ultimately accountable compassion is ensured. It reflects John Rawls' concept of justice as a fairness. Now, ethics of technology, you can see here ethics of using technology as gatekeeper for welfare schemes. Now, how we can discuss that? First of all, positive aspect of technology, efficiency, faster service delivery. Second, probity, reducing the duplication, fraud and leakage. And third, transparency. So that's why positive aspects are there. But there are ethical concerns also. What are these? Exclusion due to technological failure, जैसे यहाँ पे हो रहा है. Then equity, disproportionately affecting elderly, poor, children, disabled. Then dignity, why people have to prove again and again their identity when it is the technological failure on behalf of administration. Then privacy, biometric data security and their privacy of data. Then accountability, yes, when there is failure, whether the administration is being held accountable for delay of that distribution of relief, or we can say that benefits. Accessibility, because of digital divide, especially in rural remote areas, there is a digital divide. Internet connectivity is not there. Because of that, lack of accessibility is there. Philosophical basis, same Kantian ethics, human dignity principle, and Amartya Sen's principle, capability approach. So here the benefits are there, but long term, let's say capability of the people, empowering them so that they have freedom of choice, we can say, that is available, that will be called as justice according to Amartya Sen. So technology should be acting as a facilitator and not as a gatekeeper. ये हम conclusion में बोल सकते हैं, right? So this is, we can say that one more case study. Then second last question, Rajapuram, a border district, we can say that. Again discuss ethical issues. ठीक है, तो ये अभी फोर्थ केस स्टडी है जिसमें एथिकल इश्यूज पूछा गया है. तो पढ़ रहे हैं तो यहाँ पे बता ओवरऑल मैं चीज़ें बता देता हूँ एंड देन विल आइडेंटिफाई द एथिकल इश्यूज. ठीक है, तो ये एग्जैक्टली जो मणिपुर में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट चल रहा है कुकीज़ एंड मैथीज़ के बीच में, तो वही एक काइंड ऑफ सिचुएशन यहाँ पे नरेट किया गया है कि वहाँ पर भी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन जो है न्यूट्रल नहीं है, ऐसा बोला गया. और पीपल वर नॉट ट्रस्टिंग ऑन द एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन बिकॉज विद इन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन देयर वर डिविजन्स. That some let's say administrators are favoring the cookies, some administrators are favoring Meiteis. तो उनके actions जो है objective नहीं रहेंगे, impartial नहीं रहेंगे. People will not trust administration and therefore the administrative actions will not be effective. People will not be cooperating with them. This was the, let's say, issue in the Manipur. Similar kind of case study is basically designed here. Insurgency concern is there, highway has been blocked and all these things. CRPF units are there for help restoring the peace in that area. तो कैसे होगा? Ethical issues क्या है यहाँ पर? So first we should talk about some dimension in introduction. Ethnic conflict is going on, humanitarian crisis is there, human rights are violated. Then we can talk about is national security concern is involved related to insurgency, and administrative efficiency is questioned because of, we can say that, lack of neutrality. So these are 4 dimensions we have to understand, and you can give context in introduction about similar situation happening in Manipur between Meitei and Kuki community. Then ethical issues, first violation of dignity and right to life, death, violence is happening, disruption to the access to the food, medicine is happening, so it is violation of dignity. Then lack of impartiality and neutrality on the behalf of administration, there is division within the administration, and that's why actions are not being called as neutral. Lack of justice and let's say equity, unequal resource allocation, land claims by the people, communities, majority and minority communities, that's why lack of justice. Lack of rule of law because violence is going on. Violation of humanitarian ethics, equal access to food, healthcare and sanitation in relief camps must be ensured. Security versus liberty concept, concerns related to insurgency are also there. So ये क्या हो गए, ethical issues हो गए. Now what are the options before Rajan available? ठीक है, यहाँ पे options क्या है, and which option will ensure protection of human rights without compromising ethics and his non-partisan approach. ठीक है, देखते हैं क्या है options. One is use of overwhelming force to establish peace and order. Extreme force use कर दो ताकि peace settle हो जाए. Second, prioritize negotiations and avoid coercive measures. दोनों extreme options है. Third, recommended balance option, dialogue plus neutral administration plus calibrated security plus humanitarian relief. So here focus should be on preventing violence, that and by let's say also reopening highways and ensuring food, medicine supply and relief, we can say relief camps security. So how we can ensure that? First, ensuring peace. ठीक है, peace building कैसे होगा? तो दोनों साइड के लोगों के जो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स है उनको बुला के देयर रिप्रेजेंटेशन शुड बी देयर इन पीस कमिटी. सो फॉर्म दैट पीस कमिटी फर्स्ट. सेकंड, वी कैन से दैट एड्रेसिंग इशू ऑफ इनजस्टिस एंड इक्विटी. तो थोड़ा टाइम लगेगा ना इसको, जो रिसोर्स एलोकेशन है या फिर लैंड क्लेम्स है तो उसके रिलेटेड. ठीक है. Then security, strengthen intelligence and border let's say surveillance and accountability for violence. Those who are involved in the violence, they should be held accountable, impartial investigation, compensation for those which are victims of that violence, rehabilitation and long-term reconciliation. Then we can say justification, ethical justification, you can give John Rawls principle of justice as fairness, Gandhian principles you can mention, non-violence, dialogue, conciliation. Then we can talk about administration should remain neutral, impartial and objective. Civil service values you can mention of objectivity, impartiality and we can say that non-partisanship. In conclusion, ensure justice, equitable institutions and reconciliation. This should be in conclusion you can mention. So this is the way administration should remain neutral, then only there will be trust of people in the administration and effective governance will be there. Now last case study again you can talk about is discuss the options available, it is saying, and how to balance the nation's economic and strategic interest with the ethical consideration. So whole of the case study is related to arms export. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पर आप जो है हेड ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ वेपन्स सेल है इन मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ डिफेंस प्रोडक्शन, एंड देर आर 2 ऑप्शंस अवेलेबल विथ यू फॉर आर्म्स एक्सपोर्ट. कंट्री ए जो है डेवलपिंग नेशन है, साउंड टेक्नोलॉजी बेस है, planning for R&D collaboration with our country for next generation of weapons, not part of any security alliance, needs weapons for protecting it from the troublesome neighbor, seeks large acquisition of long term loan. ठीक है, large acquisition करेगा. And then there is option of country B, developing nation है but military strength is a priority, military budget काफ़ी ज़्यादा है and that budget is let's say obscuring the human resource and infrastructure development. Yes, it is in security alliance with the superpower which has large military base there and periodically allots it financial grants. It is member of economic bloc with which the government is currently negotiating with free trade agreement and not signatory of NPT, but possesses smaller nuclear weapons and delivery system. It supports some guerrilla forces abroad. कहीं ना कहीं ये ईरान का लग रहा है ना, एग्जाम्पल दिया हुआ थोड़ा सा है ना, सब सारी चीज़ें मिक्स करके दे रहे हैं. देन वी कैन टॉक अबाउट इज इट हैज सॉट अ स्मॉलर एक्विजिशन and it's prepared to make some advance payment. देखिए smaller है, larger acquisition यहाँ पे बोला है long term loan पे, और ये थोड़ा सा मतलब डिफेंस, सेल्फ डिफेंस के लिए प्रोक्योर करना चाहता है। तो आपको टास्क दिया गया है कि ये सारे जो दोनों ऑप्शंस है उसको इवैल्यूएट करो एथिकल पर्सपेक्टिव से, और कौन सा लेट्स से कंट्री हमने चूज करना चाहिए ऑप्शन। ऐसा ही केस स्टडी जो है 3-4 years बैक दे हैड आस्क्ड अबाउट which 5 principles, ethical principles should be considered in arms export by we can say that India when it is doing the arms export। तो ये 5 principles को focus करना था वहाँ पर। Similar concept here also we are focusing। So what are the options available here? First option is selling arms to country A, simple, merits and demerits। Then second option, exporting arms to country B, merits and demerits। Third, we can say that reject both countries options। Fourth, preference to country A with stringent safeguards, that is most appropriate, we can say that। Why we are talking like this? Because country A is let's say procuring for defense requirement, ठीक है, against the troublesome neighbor। Then technology partnership, deep tech is there available, technological base is there, lower risk of diversion, we can say that, plus long term strategic value, and it is kind of precautionary principle we are following। Now second part is how we can balance economic interest, strategic interest with the ethics here। Economic interest will say that defense exports and revenue, ethics will say that responsible country, export to the responsible country। Then strategic partnership, strategic interest will say that we should have strategic partnership, ethics will say that ensure non-proliferation, ठीक है, non-proliferation to the anti-national elements, terrorist groups। Then economic interest will say that defense manufacturing should result into employment generation and all these things, economic growth। But ethics will say that end use monitoring should be also done। Then the strategic interest will talk about geopolitical interest, while ethics will say that peace and humanitarian consideration should be there। So ultimately ethical consideration should ensure just war theory जो है सेंट अगस्टिन का just war theory, वहाँ पर legitimate purpose should be ensured, proportionality should be ensured। Then Kautilya and Machiavelli will say that national interest should be focused। Tagore and Mahatma Gandhi, Kant will say that humanism is let's say focus, should be focused, peace and non-violence should be focused। So ultimately what we can say that those 5 principles simply we can mention here, ठीक है। So arms exports, ठीक है, ethical principles that we should keep in mind। First, purpose for which they are basically importing, whether the country is importing for any aggression purpose, future aggression possible, or defense, self defense purpose। Second, we can say that past history of, we should look into past history of human rights violations by that country, that will also give you idea। Third is we can say that you should also focus and ensure, we can say that non-proliferation into anti-national activities, end use monitoring। Then we can say that follow legal aspects, ठीक है, at national and international level, all laws, covenants, international conventions should be followed। And third, we can say that ensure accountability, there should not be any corruption, kickbacks in arms trade, arms deal, ठीक है, ensured accountability। So this is the way you should talk about that। Conclusion, long term national interest is that international credibility should be there, like India's example, strategic reliability should be there, commitment to peace and responsible defense exporter as India's image। This is the way you should talk। So these were the ethics related questions। See, within 2 hours we have covered all these questions and I have given the basic framework for all these questions। Do the value addition by yourself also, आपके examples दीजिए, try to relate with different syllabus topics, civil services values and different, let's say, philosophies, theories, add your own quotes also if they are relevant. Okay, so if you find this video helpful, you can comment in the comment box. If you have any question also, you can ask there, and share with the maximum students, your friends also, they can benefit from this and secure your 130 plus marks with this new we can say renewed approach with the changes that UPSC has brought this year. So we expect that कि next year भी continue करेंगे, we can expect that also. ठीक है, तो and subscribe to Legacy IAS channel to receive such kind of quality study material and guidance. Thank you.